Hello everyone, and welcome to this session around Tableau this afternoon. Now, as you can see, we're coming to you live from what seems like the Blue Mountains right behind me here. Now, as you can imagine, no presentation is ever finished until the lawyers sprinkle the magic dust over all the slides. So I would encourage you to be mindful when you are making your next purchase decision and when you look at the products that are currently in the market. My name is Bryla. I am part of the Tableau team here based in Sydney, and I've been with Tableau for over 7 years now. And I remember in 2013 when I joined, there were only 4 of us in whole of Australia and New Zealand. Fast forward to today, and we had to move into a new office. We in fact took 3 floors in that office to accommodate the growing team that we currently have in Australia. Now, as part of my role, I have a lot of conversations with customers. And these conversations sometimes are technical in nature. Of course, we are a software company after all. But many of them turn to conversations around people, and more specifically around culture and how to create and develop that culture of curiosity and critical thinking. Because I think that is the key element to scale analytics around your whole organization. Now, I have a feeling that many of you watching this right now are probably asking yourself, how does Tableau fit into this ecosystem? And how does it compare to Einstein Analytics, for one? So if you look at Einstein Analytics, its focus is mainly around the Salesforce users. And it provides users with an AI-based insights with follow-up actions, and all that lives in that native CRM experience. And obviously, the result of that is that we get great productivity gains for those frontline sales and services workers. Tableau is quite different. For us, we think everyone in the organization could be using Tableau, because we cover all the different use cases across pretty much every department in your company. And these use cases are supported by many different data sources. And we can, of course, talk to those data sources, we can blend them together, we can prepare them for analytics. And Tableau is mostly used by users to explore the data and to ask more deeper questions. And then, of course, share those findings with a broad range of users. And for the leadership team, that, of course, means that they have this 360 view of the entire business. So hopefully, if this is still not very clear, hopefully at the end of this session, you'll see some examples and see how Tableau really shines in what I just talked about. So for us, we have been on a mission for many years now, since the beginning when the company was started out of Stanford University. And we live by these 7 words. We help people see and understand data. Now, the key word in this statement is people, because we think that this is not something that only data scientists, data engineers, or IT professionals should be doing, or using data for that matter. It should be for everybody else out there. And many of our customers are on a very similar mission to us, and many of them are using Tableau from across the whole organization to help drive businesses and answer questions and be more data-driven. There's just a handful of logos on here. You probably spot a few Australian ones there as well. There's thousands of Australian customers that I deal with as well. I then thought I'm going to bring a little use case here to explain and maybe show you how Tableau solves some difficult problems at times. And I'm using the one here from the US Air Force because it really blew my mind when I saw it for the first time. It was presented at one of our conferences. So let me set the scene for you. This is, we're talking about US Air Force infrastructure, or more specifically, maintenance of that infrastructure. So we're not talking about planes and the flying machines. That's kind of separate. We are talking about buildings. We're talking about runways, hangars, everything that is outside of flying things. And just to give you some numbers, their budget, just the maintenance budget, that's not the whole budget, is $2.1 billion. That's a big number, right? But here's the problem. They are sitting on a $25 billion backlog, meaning that they need $25 billion today in order to maintain all of their assets up to the right level. Now, clearly, they're not going to go to Congress and ask for someone to write them a check for $25 billion. That's just not going to happen. So this is where Tableau came in. And I'm going to take you through a little journey here of how they use different ideas to try and solve this problem. This, what you're looking at here, looks kind of complicated initially, but let me explain. It's actually much simpler than it seems. So the chart at the top, every little pixel you see on there is an asset. And these pixels could be green, which means the asset is functioning very well and it's maintained well. Or they could be orange, they could be red. And red, of course, means that it's probably falling apart. The length of that bar chart shows you how many assets you have, of course. And you've got a list of different sort of regions. And within these regions, you've got many installations and so on. And one other key thing to look at here is the things on the left of that chart, of those bar charts, assets that are very important. So things like runways, things that if they break, we can't fly in place anymore. The right-hand side is less important assets. So this could be things like libraries or benches or carports, right? The planes will still fly, but if they disintegrate, but we should still look after them. The blue chart in the middle is probably the most boring chart you've ever seen. It's the next 30 years, and we're simply looking at the budget being exactly the same, $2.1 billion. The interesting chart is the one below. The pink chart shows you the $25 billion today, which will balloon to something like $70 billion in 2047. So what if we did nothing? I'm going to run you through a little animation now, and you'll see what happens. Because we still need to spend money on those important assets, they're still relatively green. The ones on the right, they call it the cigarette effect here, are all kind of really losing their shine there, and they probably need to be replaced. So keeping the status quo doesn't really solve the problem. What if we went and asked for $1.5 billion, which clearly is not going to happen anyway, but if we did that, and we run it over, again, the 30-year period, you can see everything turns to green. And you can also see the pink chart at the bottom is finally, going down and not increasing all the time. By the way, that increase is $3 million every day currently. Now, you don't need Tableau to show that throwing so much money at the problem is going to solve the problem, right? So they had to go and look outside the box now. I said, how else could we try and solve this gap? So instead of maybe looking at servicing all of the assets, how about we see which assets we don't really need to own anymore? Maybe we could sell some of them, maybe we could rent them from the councils or the private sector. And this is exactly what they've done. They created a new model of how they wanted to manage those assets. So if I play this over the next 30 years, watch what happens to the bars, right? They're shrinking a little bit because we are now getting rid of some of the assets. Everything is turning green. Look at the pink chart. It is going down, and by 2028, we would, be in the black again. Yes, there was some investment there. There was $1 billion investment initially, but it wouldn't last that long. And the blue chart looks very interesting too. Once we have fixed the backlog, then we can manage those assets much better. I think this was a fascinating story, and there was some amazing impact from this. So what they told me is, when they were working on this project and putting these visualizations together, and remember, the data was always there, right? This is not like we suddenly saw something that wasn't visible in the past. We just presented it in a visual way. And at that time, the Congress was about to cut that budget by $500 million over 5 years. When they saw these models, they simply said, we can't do that. This simply makes no sense. In fact, we should be putting more money because we understand the challenge that you have. So this was a great outcome there. The next one, which I thought was really impressive, is when they started this project, only about half of the data was either correct or in existence or available. By the end, or by 6 months later, almost 80% of that data was suddenly correct or available. Because people started using this, started seeing value in it. And remember, we're only looking at the summary here, but others were looking at a more detailed view as well. And they said, well, this is so useful to me, I better make sure that my data is correct. And my favorite here is that people in position of influence suddenly understood the value of data. And they said, we have never seen it like this before, right? I now get what it is to be more data-driven. So when I joined Tableau, and just like many of my colleagues, we joined Tableau because we thought data can change the world. And we still believe that. Unfortunately, there are a whole lot of headwinds that are blowing in our direction that we're always trying to get across and challenge. And one of those is the fact that many people think that data is only for experts. Now, as I already showed you with our mission statement, we talk about people. We're not talking about data scientists only and data engineers and IT professionals. So for us, we believe that this is not really for experts. Now, there's a whole lot of data and research that points in a direction where maybe some of these problems originate. So, for example, here was a research done looking at companies, and only 24% or less than a quarter of them were able to give access to data to their users, right? Now, this could be a technical problem because data lives in many silos. That could be easily fixed. I think sometimes the challenge is more of a cultural change that needs to happen, that we believe the data needs to be shared across the company and the value that we can gain out of seeing each other's data sets. Another pretty sad-looking statistic is that only 8% of companies achieve this analytics at scale. And when I'm talking about scale, I don't mean scalability in terms of CPUs and storage and cloud computing and that kind of stuff. I'm talking about people in the organization having access to things, being able to use data to answer questions when they arise. Right? For me, when you're sitting in a meeting, and when we go to meetings, we usually try to solve problems. We usually want to come up with new ideas. We should be asking, like, this is a great idea. Do you have some data to prove it, that it's a great idea? And that conversation then starts, well, maybe we don't have the data. We might have to go and get it. And that should be part of every conversation, as opposed to just looking at a monthly report or a weekly report. So for us, data is for everyone. And I think what we've been striving to do is obviously bring the technology that will enable users to make that reality. So over many years, we have been innovating at an incredible pace. We release a new product, new version every quarter. Just in the last 12 months, we released over 200 new features. And if you open up the hood, you can see that we're quite agnostic in terms of how you would use Tableau. We don't really mind or care what cloud provider you're using, whether you're using on-premise, in cloud, whichever cloud you want us to manage it for you, or you can manage it yourself. We know you've got many different data sources, so we allow you to connect to these different data sources in a native way. We know your data is not clean and not used or not designed for analytics sometimes, so we need to prepare it for that purpose. And of course, this is encapsulated by the whole suite of governance and security and compliance, so you can trust the data that you're using. And of course, there is the analytics piece. That's the bread and butter of what Tableau does really well. And then we can share this with the whole organization. And again, we don't really care how you want to share this. Do you use a browser? Do you use a desktop? Do you use mobile devices? Do you like to embed this content inside the applications that you use every day? And of course, this fits beautifully in the whole Salesforce ecosystem as well. We bring the smart analytics that people absolutely love. So often we get users come to us, Tableau is so much fun to use. It's an application, it's an enterprise level application. You don't often get people saying that. And of course, it's trusted and it's enterprise level. Now, I think I've been talking for a little bit too long without showing you what Tableau is really about. So I've got a few demonstrations that I'm going to walk you through next. And the first one is based on a data set from an organization called Kiva. Some of you might be familiar with them. They provide microloans to developing countries and third world countries, small little loans. The money comes from other people that want to contribute. So I just opened Tableau here and already loaded the data set earlier. And you can see on the left-hand side, you've got some panes there that talk about dimensions and measures. Now, measures are things that we're going to count, aggregate. Dimensions are things that we're going to use to slice your data by. Is it by geography, by industry, by gender, and so on. So I typically want to kind of get a quick view of what this data looks like. So how many loans are we talking about here? Well, it's 1.6 million loans. What's the total amount of those loans? The funded amount is $1.3 billion, and this is how it splits between the genders. All right, so you can see women are getting 2/3 of the loans compared to men. But if you look at the average now, you notice that the average loan is a little bit smaller for women and so on. So even in this first 20 seconds, you already get a good feel for what kind of data set we're talking about here, and what's the size, how does it split across genders and so on. Now, of course, this is something that works across the globe, so we'll be very interested to see how these loans are split across the countries. So we can simply pick a country. We understand countries, cities, states, all the geographies, and by putting in the funded amount, we can see which countries get most of the funding. We can also look at this over time and see the growth over since 2005 over here, I think. So you can see it's growing at quite a rate there. Now, this might not be a great view to show you the actual loan amounts. You can see, look at Canada, right? It's a big country, so it's kind of disproportional to the loans. So I'm going to change perspective quickly and use bubbles. And the bubbles and the size of the bubble will indicate what, is the funded amount. So you can quickly see Kenya stands out and the Philippines stand out. Now, this is an interesting view, but maybe it's not as useful as it could be. So I want to look at it from another angle. I want to look at this over time now. So I'm going to look at the funded amount, and I don't really know how to visualize this. I'm going to select funded amount, date, and a sector. And Tableau suggests for me, the best way to visualize this might be a line chart. And of course, this is time series, so line charts are great for that purpose. Again, in isolation, it's kind of interesting, but probably not that useful yet. So another angle we could take on here is look at those sectors. Where is this money spent? And the sectors then divide into activities. Now, there's quite a lot of data on the screen here, but I like to see it all together so I can do some comparisons. And a tree map is a great way to visualize this. And by putting sector on color now, I can quickly see how the sectors compare to each other, and I can also see how each sector is made up with those activities. But this is now where the magic happens, is when you start combining these together. So we're going to use a map, we're going to bring our sectors, and we're going to bring our time series. And the next thing we want to do is link them all together, so we can start cross-referencing and asking questions in all directions. So we make the map act as a filter, and we're going to make the funding sector as a filter as well. So now we can go in and ask, well, let's look at Philippines in a little bit more detail. And you can see retail and general stores is where a lot of the money is going. Something going that it went down over the recent times. If I look at Kenya, agriculture is on the way up, and farming. Well, I'd like to explore agriculture a little bit more. So let me click on farming, and I can see where that is now, where the loans are going on around the world. And again, you can see Africa and Asia. What about textiles? If I select that, I can see a lot of the funding goes to South America, because clearly that's where the skills are. So just in a few minutes, we explored the data. And by the way, we just created a dashboard, right? Which we can publish, and others can keep exploring further. But without writing any SQL, we can ask what are some interesting questions so far. Now let's go to something closer to what you guys use probably every day, Salesforce. So firstly, as we already mentioned earlier, Tableau supports a whole lot of different data sources. I think we're talking about 85 plus native connectors. And even if we don't have a connector, there is an API that will always get the data into Tableau for you. If it's in the cloud, it works for us. If it's on-premise, it works for us. We're going to connect to some Salesforce data here. Now, we understand the structure of the Salesforce data. So if you brought in the accounts, we also bring in all of the supporting tables, and we know how they all relate to each other. So it's an easy place to start. Now, in this example, I'm not actually going to use accounts. I'm going to go and use an opportunity table. So in this case, I'll just bring a single table. And we just drag it in. And in this case, we need to do an extract of that data. And when we do the extract, we're bringing it into a data engine called Hyper, which is specifically designed for speed. It's a columnar data store to make your analysis really, really fast. So once we've got this data in, I can then start asking some questions. So I'm quite interested to see the discount levels that our account owners are giving to our customers. So you're looking at a scatter plot here, and you can see Jeff Simmons is a bit of an outlier there. he's discounting at 35%. That's pretty high. Now, I could go and interrogate manually to find out why, or I could ask Tableau to say, can you explain to me why Jeff is an outlier here? What is driving that? Now, in this particular case, you can see Tableau ran some statistics on this, and it just basically picked out that there was a $3,000 discount. Clearly, either there's a very happy customer there, or we simply have an error with our data. So let's see the world where this point was removed. And you can now see that Jeff is actually pretty okay. I don't think we'll be calling him to headmaster's office. He's only 13% discount, actually below his peers there. So again, just a few clicks, and we're getting that additional insight. So up to this point, we've been talking about analyzing and asking questions and so on. But there are many users out there that are mainly using content that's already created for them. So I'm now logged into a Tableau server, and I can see all the different visualizations that either I use regularly, those are my favorites. I can see the recent ones that are opened, and I also get recommendations, kind of Netflix style, saying, look, there's a few things trending you might want to see, or there's some other things that, based on what you've been looking at, you might be interested in seeing as well. So for us, a dashboard is usually the beginning of the story. It's not the end. So we would like to start conversations with these dashboards. So we're looking at a little marketing dashboard here, open leads versus prime leads. And on the side, we can start having a conversation around this. And you can see Ringo and Ellie are talking right there. And they're taking snapshot of the data and the visualization at the time where they made those comments. So we can always go back in time and see what that looked like. Now, I'm sure you're all thinking now, I probably have more questions to ask. And dragging and dropping things would be kind of easy for people that have used Tableau before. But I think there are many people out there that will still find that a little bit challenging. So how could we lower the barrier for those people? You know, we keep talking that we want the entire organization to use data. Maybe there is an easier way. And what could be easier than, you know, doing a Google search or asking questions in a more natural way? So a few years ago, we released a capability called Ask Data, which is our natural language capability. So you can see here we simply have a bar where you can enter your question in plain English. And it's the same data set we've seen before. And I want to know the average discount across state. Now Tableau will deduce from this, well, you're looking at states, clearly showing it as on the map will make more sense. And the map comes up. And this is still a fully interactive visualization. It's not just a picture or a snapshot. So let's look at something a little bit more complicated. So that was pretty simple. So what if I wanted to compare my discounts to the size of my orders and do this by an opportunity? All right, so this is a comparison. Tableau is now linking it up to the different data elements to try and create a query that will then generate what we would probably expect is a scatter plot, since we're doing that comparison. I might also go and explore a little bit deeper now and say, well, instead of discount, maybe I want to look at profit. We could obviously ask that in a natural way, or we can just pick it from a list. And the conversation continues, where I can start refining things and say, how about just show it to me with technology? Now, I don't know what technology lives, but Tableau knows. It knows that it is under industry. Right? Because Tableau understands the metadata, understands the data, it understands the questions that you're asking, and it's learning from all of that. So I think this is going to lower the barrier for people that simply would not use data in the past. So we need to create an environment that you can see exactly where the data is coming from and how it is put together. So we also know the data is not usually clean, it needs to be combined together and cleaned up. So here you're looking at data prep and our capability to prepare your data for analysis. We're not going to build these flows today. It's going to show you one that exists here that combined 3 data sources, union them together, and then brought in another data source and joined it, and then made created some filters on it, and an output. This might run on a regular basis, be it daily or hourly. But the other interesting element is to know how your data is being used. So we created a data catalog to give you that inside view of how data is being used. How often is it being used? So you can see this particular data source is really common in many different workbooks. We can then see which of those data sources are trusted, and I can really rely on it being correct. or which of the data sources are currently broken or there is some issue there. Maybe they're not refreshing. Now we can also dig a little bit deeper and look at each individual data source in more detail. So here we're looking at a whole lot of fields, and if you look on the right-hand side, you'll see a lineage. You'll see exactly where this data is coming from and who is using it. So as an example, if I wanted to modify one of the elements in this data set, I could quickly see that it is being used by 17 workbooks out there with 32 sheets, and there are 6 owners of those workbooks that we should probably notify and let them know that we are planning to make some changes which will impact those dashboards. And here's the list of those users, and we can simply send them an email and say, guys, this is what we're planning to do. So I think this will just bring so much more trust into the data that you're using, since you know where it's coming from. So the next, I wanted to talk about another little secret ingredient here. And you know, I've been around the block a few times, as you can probably tell. Hope you're not streaming this in 4K. So I have worked for many companies. I have never come across a company with a community as thriving as this one. Every day I still cannot believe how these thousands of people are helping each other, and they're willing to go that extra mile to create content, to be on forums, to participate in user group. It is just astonishing. I've never seen this before, and it's really what makes Tableau so special. And as part of that, many years ago now, we have released a free version of Tableau called Tableau Public. So it's the version of Tableau that lives on the internet, and anybody can use it. As the name suggests, it's public, so there is no security. You can publish anything you want, and everybody can see it. And in many cases, people actually download the workbooks and learn from it, and even some of the data sources. To give you the scale of this, there are 750 authors around the world that are actively creating over 2 million visualizations, and there are over 2 billion views of its life. It is just incredible. And the kind of stuff you'll find on there, I was just searching, honestly, 2 days ago. Obviously, bushfires in Australia was really a sad summer for all of us here, and there are many, many visualizations there that will not only tell you, the geography and where things are happening, but also give you some commentary on what's going on and what you should be looking at and what the damage might be. If you're interested in the Chinese space program, there is a viz for that too, right? You can see how they're tracking and how they're succeeding or failing, and how they track into putting people on the moon in 2030 as they're planning to do, right? And whether you are into movies or whether you're into sport, there's always something there for you to find. In fact, the Harry Potter, I found there were 1,362 different visualizations on Harry Potter alone. Clearly, lots of people have a lot of time and bring the creative expression through Tableau Public here. And we don't stop there. We think that people should start appreciating and using data from an early age. So we have committed to giving free licenses to students and instructors at universities and at schools. In fact, my son is using Tableau right now for his year 12. Because we think, they shouldn't be struggling with data. They shouldn't be using Excel when maybe it isn't appropriate. Why not put them on the right foot so they learn how to use data and how to ask questions themselves? And of course, we also have many user groups, in fact, over 500 around the world, that are all run by the community. All we provide is beers and pizza most of the time. So I think community makes Tableau what it is today. I actually don't see how we would be as successful as we are without that group of people. So we cherish them dearly. And I think this kind of brings me to the end, but before I go, I would recommend that you visit the online expo, and there are some more demonstrations around Tableau, and you can ask questions online as well if you want to know more. And I wouldn't want to leave the stage before I ask you to please give us some feedback so that we can make things better next time around and see how this is relevant to what you were expecting from this session. So with that, thank you very much.